The red marbles. I was at the corner grocery store buying some early potatoes. I noticed a small boy, delicate of bone and feature, ragged but clean, hungrily appraising a basket of freshly picked green peas. I paid for my potatoes, but was also drawn to the display of green peas. I'm a pushover for creamed peas and fresh potatoes. Pondering the peas, I couldn't help overhearing the conversation between Mr. Miller, the store owner, and the ragged boy next to me. "Hello, Barry. How are you today?" "Fine, Mr. Miller. Just admiring them peas." "Would you like to take some home?" asked Mr. Miller. "No, sir. Got nothing to pay for 'em with." "Well, have you anything to trade with me for those peas?" "I got my prize marble here." "Is that right? Let me see it." "All right, here it is. She's a dandy." "I can see that. The only thing is, this one is blue. I sort of go for red." "Do you have a red one like this at home?" the store owner asked. "Not exactly, but almost." "Tell you what, take this sack of peas home with you, and your next trip up this way, let me look at that red marble," Mr. Miller told the boy. "Sure will. Thanks, Mr. Miller." Mrs. Miller, who had been standing nearby, came over to help me. With a smile, she said, "There are 2 other boys like him in our community. All 3 are in very poor circumstances. Jim loves to bargain with them for peas, apples, tomatoes, or whatever. When they come back with their red marbles, and they always do, he decides he doesn't like red after all, and he sends them home with a bag of produce for a green marble or an orange one when they come on their next trip to the store." I left the store smiling to myself, impressed with this man. A short time later, I moved to Colorado, but I never forgot the story of this man, the boys, and their bartering for marbles. Several years went by, each more rapid than the last. Just recently, I had the opportunity to visit some old friends in that Idaho community. While I was there, I heard Mr. Miller had died. They were having his visitation that evening, and knowing my friends wanted to go, I agreed to accompany them. Upon arrival at the mortuary, we fell into line to meet the relatives of the deceased and to offer whatever condolences we could. Ahead of us in line were 3 young men. One was in an army uniform, and the other 2 wore nice haircuts, dark suits, and white shirts, all very professional looking. They approached Mrs. Miller, standing composed and smiling by her husband's casket. Each of the young men hugged her, kissed her on the cheek, spoke briefly with her, and moved on to the casket. Her misty blue eyes followed them as one by one each young man stopped briefly and placed his warm hand over the cold, pale hand in the casket. Each left the mortuary, awkwardly wiping his eyes. Our turn came to meet Mrs. Miller. I told her who I was and reminded her of the story from those many years ago and what she had said about her husband's bartering for marbles. With her eyes glistening, she took my hand and led me to the casket. "Those 3 young men who just left were the boys I told you about. They just told me how they appreciated the things Jim traded with them. Now, at last, when Jim could not change his mind about color or size, they came to pay their debt. We've never had a great deal of wealth in this world," she confided. "But right now, Jim would consider himself the richest man in the world." With loving gentleness, she lifted the lifeless fingers of her deceased husband. Resting underneath were 3 exquisitely shined red marbles. The moral of this story is that we will not be remembered by our kind words, but by our kind deeds. Life is not measured by the breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away.